Comedians who just spent years whining about wokeness and how soft people are showing how much projecting they must have been doing, as they have started to crash out over jokes about them.
Mr. Joe Rogan, Mr. Scientist, are you saying that we shouldn't
Don't do that. Don't call me Mr. Scientist.
Real, like, rat weasel shit.
Brian, shut the f*** up.
Nothing annoys me more than major hypocrisy. And look, we're all human. Everyone can be a little hypocritical over something. But when it's on a major scale and when it becomes a part of the grifting world that I can't stand, then I take an issue with it. A war on woke broke out at the dawn of this decade. That, of course, was an agenda that came from a cancel culture agenda.
A lot of crowds now very sensitive. Everybody's so offended these days. Words.
First, let's go back to the term woke, which, like most words in popular culture, started in black culture for black people to remain aware of their surroundings and the social and racial injustices they faced. This is going way back to the 1930s when fighting social injustice. What happened to this term was to take it and mix it with the very real extreme cancel culture that was starting to happen. I always hated when people would go back on social media and find posts from people that were teenagers and their posts online when they were teenagers and try to cancel them for things they posted on Twitter when they were 14. Cancel culture did get to a point of going too far, but then that pushback against cancel culture became this big agenda too.
If you're a black trans woman, you get to say the things first at the meeting. There's a hierarchy in all woke culture.
The main people that became anti-woke are grifters looking to make money off of it. The people that the grifters make money off of, who are people that their whole entire personalities revolve around politics. Incels was another group who are a group that just can't get laid and want to blame women and minorities and not themselves. And another group that I saw and see bring it up a lot are drunks. Drunks who are similar to incels and can't look inward at their own problems and want to blame and lash out at others. Well, another group that clung to the anti-wokeness were some comedians. And I use that term loosely because a lot of the popular stand-up comedians over the past decade did not become popular for their actual stand-up comedy. They became popular because of their podcasts. And the leader of that drive was, of course, Joe Rogan. Mr. Never Been a Funny Stand-Up Comedian himself. It's been said to death, but humping stools was Rogan's most memorable bit. He's the original, didn't get big because of stand-up, but big because he was the Fear Factor host and then became one of the first successful podcasters.
Woke used to be a cool thing, and because of comedy,
it's foolish.
It's now it's a clown world word.
Yeah, it's a clown world word that you can't use on the other side. You can't say I'm woke because I was like, bah, you fucking idiot,
fucking loser.
Yeah. You're infected with the woke mind virus.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Comedians bought into the fuck your feelings political agenda as if both sides aren't full of crybaby bitches.
Oh, have you watched any football since these events take place?
I tried to watch it. I just couldn't because I just kept crying.
And fell for the trap of free speech as if their free speech was getting taken away, even though they were still performing in comedy clubs and arenas around the country. And I personally always found it very ironic that Rogan became the leader against cancel culture for comedians on the internet when he quite literally started cancel culture on the internet with the whole Carlos Mencia incident.
You don't know that nobody supports comedy. You don't know that nobody. If someone steals a riff from a song, that shit's in the news constantly. Yeah. Motherfuckers steal shit and make it on HBO. They steal shit, they put it on television.
He confronted Mencia and then put it up on the internet. It's the first canceling a celebrity you can remember on the internet. Now, he confronted Carlos Mencia for stealing jokes, which was a good reason. Carlos was stealing jokes from less famous comics and using them to be funny, but nonetheless, this was Rogan leading a crusade to end Carlos Mencia's career. That is the origin of cancel culture on the internet. Rogan had the biggest podcast coming into this decade and used that platform to act like a tough guy against people who are woke.
That's what I don't get. Why would you want to be on that bad snitch, tattletale side of all this?
Because they want to be woke. And because there's a lot of fear in being against wokeness.
That's what it is.
People coming after you.
And in doing so, created a lazy generation of comedians where edginess just became about saying buzzwords that are edgy on social media, saying slurs on stage to seem cool and edgy. Comedy was essentially turned into those incel forum poster edgelords. An edgelord being someone in forums that would take an extreme provocative persona on the internet to seem cool. And it's funny to me when comedians act so tough because most of them are just so insecure as people. In fact, many of them will tell you this themselves. Many reasons that comedians get into stand-up comedy in the first place is to help them with girls, to feel like they're bigger than they actually are, because they grew up with people making fun of them, and they had to hone their skills to get better at arguing back. None of these reasons are really a bad thing, but it plays into the insecurity that is now leading to this major hypocrisy that we're seeing. Dave Chappelle, who is, or at least was, an all-time great comic, is another reason for the downturn in the stand-up landscape. Dave was being called out for his jokes on trans people, which was very cancel culture oriented. So Dave decided to double down and do an entire special about trans people and trans jokes. A bold choice in a pushback against cancel culture. And Dave still at least does craft jokes. They're real jokes, even if some of them are way too long-winded these days. But with Dave doing that special, it made up-and-coming comedians see that the way up was apparently just doing trans jokes, which plays into Rogan's current very own comedy venue down in Austin, Texas, the Comedy Mothership, where now that this scene is getting pushback for being hacks, and still years later after Chappelle's special are telling repetitive trans jokes as if that wouldn't be played out after so many years, Rogan's venue is getting called out by other comedians for the people that go up on stage and repeatedly tell trans jokes or say slurs like the F word for gay people. And once again, it's ironic to me that Rogan started cancel culture over Mencia stealing jokes and now has people at his very own club that maybe aren't exactly stealing jokes, but are telling the same damn jokes over and over because, ooh, we're so edgy. And if you don't like it, you must be soft, too woke. But here's the thing. Now with this criticism and the jokes about Rogan and his boys and his comedy scene, we are seeing who is really soft. This all started when fellow comedian Mark Maron went on the Bad Friends podcast with Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino and called out a lot of comedians in the Rogan sphere for being what they are. Hacks.
Like, at what point trans people are frightened? They're afraid of being alive and have no freedom left. So that's done. When do you stop with the jokes?
When do you stop with the jokes?
And like immigrants, okay, well, they're being ripped away from their homes, and yeah, and they're all terrified, and okay, so that's done. When do you stop with the jokes?
Right.
I mean, it's one thing to pick on the vulnerable and the marginalized, but I mean, they're down.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
they're down.
Why do you got to keep hitting them unless you're a hack? Now, there's a question.
Now, in my opinion, no group should be completely immune from being joked about. But if your whole act is punching down on minorities or gay people, or if every joke is about the trans community, you really are a hack. No originality. Just doing it because edgy is supposed to be easy now. Marin was not the first comedian to call this out. Anthony Jeselnik has been saying this for quite a while too, and Jeselnik is an edgy comedian himself. But it's all about various subjects, and it's actually well-crafted jokes.
I think people want comedy to be dangerous. I want comedy to be dangerous. And if you can't get in trouble, it's not dangerous.
Right.
So complaining about cancel culture is just saying you want to take all of the danger out of it and you want it to be easy. I hate comics complaining in general. And Dave Chappelle, who's won every award in the world, is complaining that cancel culture is making his job harder. It's like, your job shouldn't be easy. Right. If you're going to make that much fucking money, like, hey, maybe it should be a little hard. You know, I got no issue with that.
So how did the fuck your feelings anti-woke comedian crowd handle the jokes and the criticism? Not well. I'd say they've been in their feelings ever since. Failed comedian Brendan Schwab went on an angry tirade in hopes it would get him into Rogan's good graces again.
Care about comedy.
Jeselnik's different than Mark. I like Jeselnik. Jeselnik's different than Mark. Mark's a salty bitch.
Tony Hinchcliffe tried to play it off with the typical just jealousy response. But this didn't stop Mark Maron from turning up the heat. In one of his stand-up specials, he mocked comedian Theo Von.
I think if Hitler were alive today, he'd probably appear on Theo Von's podcast.
And did satire that Theo is the type that he would be so welcome of having Adolf Hitler on his podcast as a guest just to have a little chat.
Hey Hitler, you probably didn't even hate the Jews. That was just the meth making you crazy, dog.
Other comedians started joining in to joke about Rogan and the environment he created. Stavros Halkis was on his podcast with fellow comedian Jordan Jensen when she immediately went into tired trans jokes. She was getting ready to head to Austin to appear on Rogan's podcast and to perform at the Mothership, and he hit her with the truth.
You're throwing these like anti-cancel culture buzzwords out. You have gotten like Austin trans brain. Like you know what I mean? Like it really is at the top of your head.
No.
Tim Dillon called out Rogan for basically canceling up and coming comedians because they might not be able to get on his lineups at his comedy venue. Maybe they don't say enough slurs.
I bring my opener to do a Tim Dillon and Friends show. Young guy from New York. He goes up. He's having a rough set. I'm sitting on the balcony watching him. Rogan is standing there watching him bomb like this. And then we walk back in the green room. Rogan goes, he's bombing, man. He can't be here. And I go, I know. I'm getting him off right now. And this is the worst nightmare of anybody, right? I go, listen. He got off. He goes, yeah, it was a little tough. He was still smiling. I go, no. Here's the thing. I go, you got to go right now.
And Dan Soder has called out the big problem in all of this, which is all of these comedians kiss Rogan's ass.
It's powerful meat, and then you see like 50 comics that don't eat meat liking the post. I love it. I love it so much. Can I work your club?
Yes, these anti-woke comedians who are so edgy and such tough guys get on their knees for Joe Rogan because in pro wrestling terms, they want the rub. They want a shot to be on his podcast because with great loyalty to Rogan, with the following like Rogan has on the podcast, with following Rogan to Austin, you might become the Robin to Rogan's Batman like Tony Hinchcliffe. With all of these jokes about Rogan's Austin community, the cracks in the tough guy facade have been showing. First, Rogan revealed how Mark Maron's joke about Theo Von on his special sent Theo Von into an emotional spiral.
Well, you know, when I decided to talk about Maron was after the Theo thing. After Theo kind of went off the rails.
Yeah.
And Theo went off the rails right after Maron put him in his special.
Now, wait, hold up. So, just to be clear, it was fuck your feelings, you're too woke and sensitive for our hacky jokes about minorities and trans women. But if you joke about a comedian, suddenly it's too far?
Words.
These jokes sent Road Rules the Challenge loser Theo Von into a depression over a joke? But I thought these guys were anti-woke and therefore could take jokes and were good with all jokes. Maybe it was Maron's commentary on some of these comedians going the way of the political grift. Theo Von has wanted no responsibility for his part in the political landscape, even though he decided to join the political discourse. But the government itself was posting a video of Theo on their own Twitter account, which Theo immediately wanted deleted. And now Theo is bombing at tapings for his comedy special and totally spiraling. But you know, the best jokes are funny because they're true, and maybe the truth hurt Theo Von with Maron's joke. So Rogan and his fellow comedy gang are becoming upset with other comics joking about what hacks some comedians are or are becoming. Of course, Rogan would be upset because he believes there's only 250 people in the whole entire world able to do stand-up comedy.
Because there's so few of us. And worldwide, there's maybe 500 of us on the planet. You know, you got to be real generous and say 500 because it's really probably about 250.
Well, if that's the case, I say make it 249 if he's including himself, because he sucks at it even after decades. Rogan has had so many of these fake tough guy comedians kissing his ass for so long now that he doesn't know how to take pushback. About a month and a half ago, fellow comedian and usual Rogan sycophant Brian Callen gave Rogan some pushback about the way Rogan so flippantly talks about vaccines.
Florida doesn't demand vaccines.
Yeah, that's dangerous to me.
All vaccines.
Tetanus.
No.
Just go down the road, Ron?
You need to bail on the tetanus thing because Suzanne Humphreys.
Educate his ass.
Suzanne Humphreys explained tetanus.
She's not a vaccinologist. I know that woman.
It's so embarrassing when you have Brendan Schwab there and a CTE telling Rogan to educate his ass when Brendan's really just being the typical ass kisser of Rogan.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, Mr. Joe Rogan, Mr. Scientist. Are you saying that we shouldn't
Don't
have...
do that. Don't call me Mr. Scientist. I'll start mocking you, and it's so much easier to mock you.
So are we not... So you don't believe in vaccines? What I'm trying to say to you is that there are certain diseases. Pick up a history book. Smallpox. Diphtheria, mumps.
Have you ever looked at
tetanus, polio, paralytic diseases?
Have you ever polio? Please stop.
Yes. No, I won't. I won't. I know you think it's just. I've heard Susan Humphreys.
This is a long conversation that we're not going to have on this podcast because I'm going to get angry because I've researched this for years.
Right.
Let's just.
But you're not a scientist.
I don't have to be a scientist to know that.
Yes, you do.
No, Brian, shut the fuck up.
But because of COVID, where Rogan had every right to question, but then boxed himself into being anti-vax everything. And I don't know why people must box themselves in so politically, because it really does stifle an open mind. And for someone who allegedly loves to sit down and have conversations and has an open mind, Rogan completely lost his shit over Callen's jokes.
I get very worried when people
he's
start
not saying all
saying
vaccines.
It sounds like he is.
Brian, you don't know what the fuck I'm saying. You don't.
Well, I know because you don't want to talk about it.
Brian, I don't want to talk about it in the middle of a podcast because it'll completely derail the podcast.
That was not someone with a thick skin that can take a joke. This coming from Joe, people that can't take jokes are pussies, Rogan?
Because I was like, bah, you fucking idiot.
Fucking loser.
While Rogan looked so weak and mad over a joke that he had to walk away and compose himself, this was the height of hypocrisy in the anti-woke movement for he and his hack comedian sycophants. And it's not like Callen didn't have the right to call Rogan out. It's not like Rogan never believes headlines as facts.
I want to find out what this is, but I read something briefly and I didn't get into the article. But they were saying that they were trying to pass a bill that would outlaw you growing your own food in Australia. And they were saying, well, you could grow your own food, and what if the disease is from your food? It infects the population. It's got to be a real thing. It better not be fake. It might be fake.
My friend, his wife, is a school teacher. And she works at a school that had to install a litter box in the girls' room because there is a girl who's a furry who identifies as an animal.
Right, or the kitty litter boxes in schools from last week. You know, that got spread around as a meme because it kind of fit the conservative view of, you know, liberals and their confusion about gender and sex and.
But the kitty litter boxes is a weird one.
It is weird. It's it's more like an urban legend.
I fed into that, and I should probably clarify that a bit.
It doesn't end there, because enter Andrew Schulz, another screw your feelings comedian who likes to push boundaries, which is fine. And a lot of these guys are good for roast comedy But if that's your only lane, you do quickly become a hack. I mean, there's a reason you only see Jeff Ross on comedy roasts, because it's all he can do. While outside of maybe being in the band Hootie and the Blowfish, as the Blowfish, honestly, I have nothing against Jeff Ross. He's good at what he does. I just wanted to make a Jeff Ross-like joke. Andrew Schulz is another comedian whose podcast went from comedy to political grifting. While Andrew and some other comedians are going through some blowback over appearing in Saudi Arabia and getting blood money, which is a totally different subject and something I don't really care about as someone who's had to watch WWE do this for years now. But hypocritical comedians like Whitney Cummings, who was so feminist and so pro Me Too movement, do become hypocrites in that they are now totally not mad with the blowback from what they're getting from going to Saudi Arabia. Whitney Cummings is so totally not mad and unbothered that she accused her own fans upset with her for performing in Saudi Arabia as being racist.
Like, you think that the people of Saudi Arabia and the Saudi government all share... Okay, so you also believe that the Chinese government and the Chinese people are exactly the same. It's just racism.
Well, Andrew is dealing with that too, and acting just so unbothered that he had time to get on his knees for Rogan because somehow Rogan is above criticism, and according to Joe Rogan, his group is totally not a gang.
That's funny. They think like we move as a group.
Yeah. But if you crack jokes about Rogan, according to fake wankster Schulz, you are terrible rats. In fact, he's thrown shots at guys like Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino just for having Mark Maron on their podcast.
Like, I've been seeing a lot of comedians like trying to like separate themselves from Austin lately. Have you seen this? Like, and now I see these comics like kind of vocally talking shit that they would talk all this shit, by the way, behind closed doors, because it's what comics do, but like real like rat weasel shit.
So fellow anti-woke comedian Andrew Schulz, who clings to the agenda that cancel culture was canceling comedians' free speech to tell jokes, is now trying to cancel other comedians for jokes and trying to stifle their free speech. Got it. Hypocrite, and it's the biggest form of hypocrisy because for the past week, Andrew has been giving one of the biggest public displays of figurative dick sucking that you will ever see, totally slobbing on Rogan's knob. Like, if you add 70s or 80s porn music to Schulz over the past week, it's a total Rogan ass-licking experience.
Use Joe and his millions of followers to boost their careers, that went on there to promote their specials, that performed at the club. Like, really used Joe's power and influence that he was very generous to give them.
And he was calling out comedians like Stavros not being able to riff with Jensen's still trans jokes when his Austin comedy brain was the punchline of that entire conversation.
And then comedians having other comedians on their podcast and then forgetting how to riff.
Andrew calling Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino and Mark Maron out on their pettiness when he is being petty, calling them rats and trying to act like he's just so intellectual when he's not at all, and he's bringing up Bill Burr's situation with Saudi.
Based on some shit that they had said in the past, I kind of get it. Like, I'll be honest, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
You know, like, Burr's getting all this pushback, and it's like the first time I've seen in his career him not, like, aware of why it's happening.
He's mad at Bad Friends for not pushing back on Mark Maron and Mark Maron's jokes, but also wants to be able to tell edgy jokes and also throw shade at Bill Burr. But at least Bad Friends and Mark Maron were funny when criticizing Rogan, instead of trying to be a fraud of an intellectual. And then we have Andrew's sidekick, Akash. Remember that alleged hierarchy of woke that Rogan talked about?
There's a hierarchy in all woke culture.
Well, there really is a hierarchy in the Rogan sphere where you must go down the line kissing each other's asses or they're going to try and stifle what you say. Akash is basically the third person in this human centipede scenario we have here. Rogan is in the front, Andrew is behind him eating all his shit, and then Akash behind him eating Schulz shit. Schulz has his very own sycophant, and Akash went into his own fake tough guy act.
Mark Maron, you ain't shit.
That's about it.
A fake tough guy at 4 foot nothing. So to recap from these anti-woke fuck your feelings hacks, calling Mark Maron a bitch and criticizing Bill Burr is okay. But making jokes about Joe Rogan and Theo Von and the mothership is bad and will hurt their feelings because they're snowflakes. How did the podcast boom lead comedians down this path of becoming major hypocrite hacks? Well, the first mistake was buying into the Joe Rogan hype, which was great and worked to make money for a few years, but it's bleeding out like all eras do. And by following along with the person who brought cancel culture to the internet in the first place, a comedian who did not thrive at stand-up comedy, but made it thanks to hosting Fear Factor, well, that was probably the first mistake. Because now they're all these pseudo-intellectuals who are on the ropes and their little tough guy acts have fallen apart. They're sensitive Sallies. They're all snowflakes in disguise.